Okay, here we go. Hello out there, and good morning. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Pineland Speaker Series. We're fortunate today Research Center as a research scientist. She works primarily with blueberries and cranberries, and today she's going to talk to us about the health benefits associated with these very healthy berries that are grown in the pinelands. With that, I turn it over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Joel. Welcome, everybody. I want to give you a really, hopefully, fun and interesting overview of blueberries and cranberries. I work out at the Marucci Center, which is near Chatsworth, and so we're right in the heart of everything out there. And here's where we're located, a little bit closer in the middle of the Pine Barrens. But as you can see, and most of you know, the Pine Barrens occupy a big swath of New Jersey. And it's just a beautiful location. And we get to be right in the middle of it and doing our research on these two native fruits. We have all kinds of little friends around us. So our center, if you haven't been out there, I recommend if there's a chance to hear a lecture to go, because we have a whole bunch of different research projects going on that I know would interest you on plant diseases and entomology, plant breeding, and my work on the medicinal aspects. So blueberries and cranberries are actually in the same genus, Vaccinium, and they are, as I mentioned, native to North America, but they grow wild in the New Jersey pinelands, and you can actually go canoeing on some of the rivers and take a little bag with you and collect the cranberries right on the sides of the rivers. So it's awfully fun. Go home and make a pie. So let's talk a little bit about how cranberries are harvested and how they grow. This is a bog out in the Chatsworth area where many of the bogs are located in southern New Jersey. And this is prior to harvesting, and it doesn't look very exciting at this point, but wait till you see what happens when they flood the bogs with water. So the berries are all kind of hidden down in the canopy, which is only about 6 to 12 inches high. They flood them, and then they run over the fields with kind of what you might say an egg beater device in a sense. It does minimal damage to the plants, but it knocks the berries off of the vines and allows them to float, because inside of the berry are a lot of hollow chambers, which make the berry act like a ball, and they do float. Then they're rounded up and pushed into place over on one side of the marsh. And here you can see it's just a beautiful sea of red color when you go out there. So if you haven't seen the harvest, I highly recommend it. Just an incredible experience. They take the berries and they put an oil boon around them and pull them in, and they go up a conveyor belt into trucks. They're also use these boons to make some whimsical shapes, which is kind of fun and different. So they're pushed up into these trucks and are washed and sorted, and all of the berries go into the trucks, and all of the waste material goes into a bin and is discarded. This is kind of interesting. This is a bog down in Chile. They have quite a bit of cranberry production in South America down there. You can see some active volcanoes in the background, so it's quite a sight to see. And of course, they would be harvested in the exact opposite part of the year. We're harvesting now in New Jersey, and if you drive down Route 563 through Chatsworth, on both sides of the road, you can personally witness a number of different cranberry harvesting events going on now for about the next week or so. So if you get a chance, drive through there and check it out. Now there's also white cranberries. They kind of fell out of favor. A few years ago, they were quite popular, but they're harvested a couple of weeks early in sort of the end of September. And some people say, oh, are they bleached? Are they genetic mutants? What's going on here? And they're just harvested before the anthocyanin pigment has a chance to form its true red color. And this is quite startling to see too when you drive by, is when you're used to seeing the red. Anyway, when the cranberries are loaded onto the trucks, they're then taken to the receiving station. And we have one right in Chatsworth. They're dumped into these large basins and washed, and then they go down kind of a staircase thing, because that's how they sort berries. Originally it was devised, the mechanism was devised where they would go down the stairs, and the ones that were rotted or not firm would stay on the stairs and not continue down the ramp. So it was an ingenious way to sort them. So this is what processed products are made from in the cranberry world, is these water harvested or wet harvested cranberries to make all of these different products that we're quite familiar with year round. The dry harvest is done on only about 3% of the crop, and this is sold as fresh market fruit this time of year. And you can find the plastic containers and sometimes frozen whole fresh cranberries in the markets to use for your sauces at Thanksgiving and Christmas. But this is a different way to harvest where no water is involved, because the water actually does compromise the berries a little bit. They can only stay in the water when it's harvested that way for a short period of time. So everything has to be timed very carefully. The dry harvest is usually done prior to the wet harvest to remove the berries that you are going to sell in the fresh market. Now, let's talk about blueberries. And the high bush blueberry is what is grown here in the Pine Barrens in southern New Jersey. Also, the number one state is Michigan, which is in the Midwest, as you know. And also the blueberry range is a lot wider than the cranberry range. Cranberries can only be grown in certain locations, like with conditions that have really good drainage and specific water, access to water and things like that. But blueberries can be grown in a lot more places. So you see them all over the United States. And high bush blueberries are grown in rows, as you can see here. And we also have out at our research center a clone. It's a white blueberry that was a genetic mutant, interestingly, and the USDA selected this. It never kind of took off, but it was originally thought, oh, we could make maybe some products for children that wouldn't stain, or elderly people, this wouldn't stain their dentures, but it never quite took off. But interestingly, it tasted just like a regular blueberry. So there's a wide variability in the genetics of the high bush blueberry, ranging from a dark pink to dark blue and white. So blueberries the majority of them are hand harvested. We have a lot of migrant pickers that come in to our area every year, and they follow the harvest and they're essential for being able to get the berries off the bushes and to marketplaces. Without them, there wouldn't be a high bush blueberry industry. So the mechanical harvesting is basically done for processing in general. They're trying to improve mechanical harvesting to be able to be used for the fresh market, but it does damage the berries a little bit. But it's used mainly for pies, yogurt fillings, things like that. And they drive right over the bushes, and the tongs knock the berries off. So once they come in from the field, they're cleaned and sorted, and then they're packaged for market, labeled. Hamilton which is very close to us here, is referred to as the blueberry capital of the world. For good reason. They have many blueberry processing facilities, and if you drive through Hamilton, even the White Horse Pike up Route 5, see a lot of blueberry production going on here. Now, the low bush blueberry, or what some call the wild blueberry. It's not really wild. It is managed culturally in the field. They do apply fertilizers and things like pesticides and insecticides unless they are organically grown. So be careful about the term wild. We refer to them as low bush, and they grow in more like a cranberry bog, a very low growing area. They're not on bushes, and they're pretty well confined to Maine and up into eastern Canada region. So they are both hand harvested and machine harvested. And the machine, I wish I could show you this video. I couldn't get it to work in the presentation, but if you Google machine harvesting of low bush blueberries, it's pretty interesting to see. They have adopted the same general design as the hand harvesting rake. And it goes through the field and pulls them right off of the vines here. So let's get into why we should be eating these fruits. And really, when you start your kids on blueberries and cranberries when they're very young, they do better. There are a number of studies looking at people who began eating these types of fruits and vegetables when they were younger. They have fewer chronic health problems as adults. And also, they seem to really love especially the blueberries right off the vines. Take them blueberry picking. And cranberries can be put into different types of foods to have your children eat them. So what happens here as we go through our lives and we're making selections of foods to eat? In our early life, we are growing, we're developing, we have very few issues physically, God willing, and we want to remain on this yellow line. But as we go into adulthood, our disability threshold begins to really suffer, and you can see that red line happens. Now, this can all be influenced by things like diet and lifestyle. You're given a set of genes when you're born, and there's not much you can do about that. But we now know that the things that we eat, the foods that we eat, can actually influence how genes work. They turn on and they turn off depending on the types of foods that we eat. So this is a type of personalized nutrition that is now being recognized by the NIH as an area that they're going to be funding a lot of research in, is to try to get people to eat for their genetic makeup and also do some good lifestyle practices that will help keep you mentally and physically on that yellow line to get into old age. So how do we measure successful aging? I mean, most of us think about aging like on the left and, Arnie over there looking great. And it's not all about looks. It really has a lot more to do with just holistically feeling good and being able to use our bodies for what we want to do. And the blue zones that they've designated around the globe, interestingly, these are places where people live longer and are healthier. And they've determined that it's because they have a lot of social engagement with, and their families are very important in their lives. But some key things are they really don't smoke a lot of cigarettes. They eat very little meat, and they're constantly kind of moving. Their life involves walking and doing chores and this kind of thing. So this is what we want to kind of strive for, is more of this holistic approach. And it's not all about just looking good and using plastic surgery to try to trick people into thinking. It's about you. And eating the foods, legumes have been associated with longevity and feeling better as well. So we want to try to add blueberries and cranberries to that list. So when you're looking at how to promote your own health, there are several avenues you can pursue. You can wait until you get sick and have to go to the doctor and get a drug, a pharmaceutical drug that is meant to basically cure your illness, but those come with lots of side effects. Dietary supplements are another route. However, they're not regulated by the FDA, and the FDA waits until someone gets sick to do anything about these. They can be adulterated and things like that. But functional foods, as far as I'm concerned, are the way to go. And if we look a little more deeply at these, pharmaceuticals really, they have active components and they're standardized. That's the only really great thing about them, is that if you do have a deadly disease, of course, they can help save your life. Many drugs are derived from them, many plant sources of drugs, both illegal and legal, but there have been heart medications and everything else that have been derived from plant sources. So the dietary supplements are derived from these plant sources, but it's extremely difficult to determine if you're actually getting the right amount of the active component to do anything for you. And they're convenient for consumers, but I think that the FDA has to do a better job of regulating these to make sure that the consumer is getting what they think they're getting, and they're not adulterated or contain toxic components like pesticides and dried down and put into capsules, because this can be a big problem. The functional food is really the best way, because you consume the whole food or mostly the whole food, and they contain phytochemicals or plant chemicals that have effects beyond basic nutrition, like beyond proteins and carbohydrates and things like that. They contain a mixture of these compounds to benefit your health, and they work together to stabilize each other. And plants are extremely good chemists. They create these little pockets where they have lower or higher pH, enzymes so they really, as far as packaging goes, we could not do a better job at packaging these bioactive compounds than the plants themselves. So that's why we always advocate eating the whole fruit. And often these things are less expensive to get than the dietary supplements and the pharmaceuticals. If you go and look through history, we've sort of done a 180 here. Back in very early days, they solved these medicinal issues with plants, roots and leaves, and made teas and that kind of thing. But now it's come back around, and we are now shying away from things like antibiotics, drugs, because they're artificial. They can do a lot of good. However, there's much more emphasis now on going back to eating the root. So keeping the body balanced on the inside is a very tricky thing, and functional foods in general have the basic strategies that I study are ones that support the immune functions in the body and protect you from diseases. Not cure diseases, but protect you. Plants can only do so much in their form, so be aware of claims that say that they will cure diseases, because that's not accurate. But the strategies for keeping your body balanced on the inside really have to do with reducing the overall oxidative stress of your body. These oxidants, which I'll talk about a little bit more, can really do harm in our bodies and cause diseases, and they're part of the disease process. And of course, inflammation, which there are short-term, very quick, what we call acute inflammatory response, which is necessary if you have a cold. Things will inflame to try to fight the diseases. And right now we have COVID-19, and the inflammatory process can kind of go out of control. It's called the cytokine storm, and the body overreacts and becomes overly inflamed and causes more problems. But this acute inflammatory response is really meant to help our bodies recover from injuries. You twist your ankle, it inflames. So in a lot of cases, it's best to let that do its thing and not try to control that inflammatory process. But when we have a lot of stress and a lot of eat a lot of bad foods and have other types of issues in our life that cause this long-term chronic inflammation, that's when we get into trouble physically. So that's where these functional foods can come into play to help us. And also keeping pathogenic organisms at bay. We have all kinds of holes in our body where these pathogenic organisms can get in and use our bodies to live and flourish and cause disease. So we want to try to eat functional foods that can, if they get in, will not allow them to wreak havoc. So blueberries and cranberries really have been around a long time, and being native to North America, the Native American Indians used them quite extensively in the wild form. They use them a lot, interestingly, if you look back in the folklore literature, for urinary disorders, which of course most people realize that these are the types of things that we use cranberries and blueberries for and are doing research on. They also, interestingly, cranberries were used as a meat preservative. They were pound directly into the deer carcass and to preserve the meat because of the antibacterial properties. And it would allow the meat, they called it pemmican, as like a jerky, if you will. It allowed the meat to be preserved over the winter, and it was a critical food source for a lot of the Native Americans. So when we look at more in the research of these fruits, what are the compounds in these fruits that are responsible for these medicinal benefits? Well, it's a group called the phenolics or flavonoids, which many of you have probably heard of. They exist in all berries pretty much, and they are responsible for a lot of the color and a lot of the medicinal aspects. So if we look at the small fruit phenolic content, the blueberries and cranberries really have a higher amounts than most commonly consumed berries. So these compounds, the anthocyanins, they are what color the fruit, red and blue. And they're almost, interestingly, they protect the fruit from UV radiation from the sun. So if you go up to very high latitudes or very low latitudes, where the sun will go around in the sky and kind of never set at certain times of the year, these berries are very, very dark, almost black, because they produce a lot of this anthocyanin pigment to protect themselves from the damage that the UV radiation can do. So another interesting aside was they are using experimentally the blueberry anthocyanins to put into sunglasses coatings to protect from your eyes from UV radiation. And the astronauts actually took them up into space to see if they would help protect them from the radiation in space. And they put them in their spacesuit front where they're looking out through their spacesuit to see if it would help protect things like their eyes from the radiation. So lots of interesting research going on. The flavonols they usually are yellow pigments that you can't see, and they are involved in attracting insects to pollinate the fruits. And the proanthocyanidins are really the group that has gotten a lot of attention for the health benefits, and they are produced by the plant as defense compounds. So young fruit will be very astringent tasting. If you happen to pick a cranberry here in June, it'll have very high levels of these proanthocyanidins. And they give cranberry juice their astringent tart taste, but they are really the compounds with a broad array of benefit for our health. So blueberries, starting with antioxidant activity, as many people have heard about blueberries having high antioxidant activity. They really were tested years and years ago by USDA, and they had the highest antioxidant benefit of a lot of different fruits and vegetables and foods that were tested. Cranberries have high antioxidant activity as well. And you can see here that the berries really at the bottom here have the highest amounts of antioxidant activity of most other fruits and vegetables. So the berry group in general is great to eat. If you can have them several times a week, you really will see a benefit on multiple fronts. So just so everybody's clear, we talk about antioxidants, but what is oxidation itself? And we know about oxidation because of rust on metal. When it comes into contact with water, we get this oxidation process. And this kind of happens inside our bodies, if you want to call it like a body rust. And these are damaging molecules called free radicals or oxidants that are sort of zooming through our bloodstream and attacking our bodies like bullets. In order for them to lose their energy level, they have to bind with something in our bodies. And they do that. It's like a bullet. If you shot a bullet at a tree stump, it would stop that bullet in its tracks. It would stop the energy in that bullet. And these oxidants, to reduce their energy level, they will bind with things like collagen. So they're very involved in the formation of wrinkles in our body because they bind to the collagen, which degrades it. And they're also involved with binding to things like DNA and even organ tissue all throughout our body. So they do cause this damage. But they're made by our bodies, and when cells grow and die, oxidants are naturally produced, but they can also be formed other ways. Our lifestyle is very, very important in the production of oxidation and the inflammatory response that occurs when oxidants are produced. Cigarette smoking is probably one of the biggest producers of free radicals. 10 to the 15 free radicals per puff on a cigarette. You're just really doing your body damage. And if you can try to give up one thing, I would definitely suggest that cigarettes would be, you'd see a huge turnaround in your health. Of course, the sun damage, sunburn is a huge oxidant producer. A poor diet, a fast food diet, things that are heavily fried in oxidized oils will produce oxidants in your bodies. And sugar is an oxidant producer. Excessive alcohol consumption is also a trigger for oxidative stress. A little bit is okay, but when it's excessive, it can cause damage. And when you're just generally stressed, stress itself produces free radicals in your body and can cause things like breast cancer in women. And so we really want to be careful about managing and reducing stress and try to pretend you're living in a blue zone and follow those rules. Pollution is a huge issue and produces oxidative stress tremendously. Their heart attacks are higher in places like India and China, where pollution levels are out of control. I've been there personally many times, and there have been times when you see people on the street actually selling bags or cans of mountain air to people, and they buy them because they just want to breathe some sort of air that isn't completely polluted. So obesity itself is also a pro-inflammatory state, and it induces oxidative stress as well. And if you're already sick with an illness like diabetes or cancer or any type of infection, you're also producing free radicals. So these lifestyle factors, really can influence your health tremendously. So it's not all bad news because, why don't we all have cancer by the age of 4 if all of this is happening to us and damaging us? How can we reduce these oxidants? Well, we do have these natural defenses. Our bodies produce natural antioxidants to try to combat these oxidant assaults. But of course, like everything else, as we age, the body's production of these natural antioxidants begins to go down. So we have to do something to make it back into balance. And there's quite a bit of research showing that if we supplement our diets with foods, especially fruits and vegetables, that we can get a better antioxidant balance in our bodies. So as I mentioned, inflammation and oxidation are just the beginning points for a lot of these types of diseases and afflictions that we fear, especially as we age. And so interestingly, blueberries and cranberries have had research done in all of these areas and have shown positive effects. So interestingly, I think they're one of the best groups, if you will, of fruits that you could possibly eat to help maintain health throughout your elderly years. So what are these negative effects when your blood vessels start to constrict from oxidative stress in general? You have these blood vessels, obviously, that carry blood all through your body. They feed your brain and your muscles and everything else. They carry oxygen on the red blood cells. So you want to have these, look at them sort of as hoses that have an open space in them. And the more open that space is for blood flow, the more blood, and i.e. the more oxygen you're going to get to your muscles and your brain and your heart and everything else. So when you have endothelial damage, as you can see, it constricts your blood vessels and narrows them down so that less blood can get through. And it cascades into a whole host of issues. I like to talk about smoking, sugar, and stress being the big 3 S's that will cause problems down the road. So if you can minimize these 3 S's, you'll go a long way to preventing a lot of the problems that previously mentioned. Now there's a thing called metabolic syndrome that some of you may be familiar with. That's the 25 to 30% of the US population currently has. And it is getting worse and worse over the years. If we don't do anything about it, we're really going to have, this is going to be probably the biggest medical issue to hit us. So as we age, it gets worse. So if you go to your doctor and you are abdominally obese or have a pot belly, high cholesterol and high blood pressure, any kind of diabetic issues or insulin resistance, where you are still producing insulin, but your body is not reacting to that insulin as well. That's what insulin resistance is. And if you continue to eat a lot of sugary foods, you will eventually develop type 2 diabetes. Inflammation also is a contributor to this suite. And now they're beginning to include cognitive decline and dementia to this suite of symptoms here. So with blueberries, interestingly, blueberries have been shown to reduce abdominal fat in mice, and now they're beginning to do studies on humans, and it's very interesting. Keep an eye on this area of research, because boy oh boy, if you could eat some blueberries and have it interfere with the mechanisms that are producing fat around your middle, that could benefit a whole host of issues associated with what they call abdominal obesity. Also, blueberries have been shown to lower total cholesterol. And interestingly, there was a study done in Canada on pigs. It was a study giving pigs blueberries, and they found that the blueberries worked better in the pigs who were given kind of what we call a basal brown diet, or a high fat, high sugar, very poor phytochemical diet. And the blueberries actually counteracted the effects of all the added fats and cholesterol, sugars, and salt. So that's pretty interesting and gives some hope to people who are still on these poor diets, that if you add blueberries in, it may actually help counteract some of the issues. And the blueberries actually worked better at lower doses of 1 or 2 cups. They went up to 4 cups, but they found that it didn't do any better. So you don't have to eat huge amounts of these fruits to get these pretty significant effects. Another big study, this was a clinical done at Pennington down south, and they did a clinical trial on people who were insulin resistant. And they found that when they gave them 2 blueberry smoothies a day for 6 weeks, the insulin, I'll show you the next slide here, the insulin actually worked better that the body was producing. So blueberries helped your body to use the insulin that it does produce to regulate your blood sugar. And this was a very significant finding. The cardiovascular benefits are quite interesting with blueberries as well, as they help improve blood flow through your body. They help improve the flexibility of your arteries for improvements in blood pressure and reduce inflammation of the arteries themselves. So the improved flow-mediated dilation, or FMD, is this sort of blood flow through your body. And blueberries, in a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, this was with men, blueberries had an effect on this blood flow, a positive effect, after only 1 hour following the blueberry consumption. And the dosage was quite low, 1/2 to 1 cup of blueberries did this. And there have been quite a few studies. Here's one on lowering blood pressure with the equivalent of 1.5 cups of fresh blueberries. So it decreased systolic blood pressure 6% and diastolic blood pressure 4%. And these were people who all had metabolic syndrome, had that full suite of issues. This one I find is very interesting in that blueberry consumption, if you ate blueberries and strawberries more than 3 servings a week, and this is in young and middle-aged women, this is not elderly or compromised people, these are healthy people. If you can eat blueberries and strawberries more than 3 times a week, it reduced heart attack risk by 34%. That's highly significant. We're getting up into drug effects here at over 30%. So this is what I'm talking about, is just trying to eat these fruits a few times a week or daily if you can, and try to eat them instead of some of these other more sugary foods and high-fat foods, because we do have a competition for stomach space and we can only really eat so much. So why not eat something that has a health functionality to it that can really benefit our health? So continuing on with the cognitive benefits of eating blueberries, especially for metabolic syndrome. These studies were done at Tufts University years ago, where they supplemented aged rat diets with blueberry chow, and they did these swim tests in these little pools, and the rats were given the blueberry chow, and then there were some that were given just regular chow, and they found that there was memory loss was reversed, and they were able to do motor activities better. And here is sort of an illustration of what happened with those old rats. And the old rats were put on this center point here. They jumped off, and the ones that were on the regular chow, the old rats, they just went all over the pool and couldn't find the exit at all. Whereas young rats, they would jump right off and find the exit right away. When they gave the old rats the blueberry chow, they behaved like young rats, and they jumped right off the platforms and were able to find the exit almost immediately. So it was an amazing finding. They went on to do some motor ability testing where they had little log rolling type little bars that the rats would do these rolling exercises on, and they could stay on these rods a lot longer when they were blueberry chow as opposed to strawberry spinach or the control. So it improved their coordination. Now this is where it really gets interesting, is they found that blueberry diet induces neurogenesis, or the production of neurons, which really very few, if any, foods can do this. We've always thought that we're born with a certain number of neurons and that's it. But no, we found that blueberries actually can turn on the production of these neurons. And this has implications for Alzheimer's disease, where it doesn't cure or prevent the Alzheimer's disease, but they found that it enhanced the communication between the neurons and it improved the functionality of Alzheimer's patients. So if you know somebody who has the early stages, get them on blueberries. It seems to improve their overall health functionality and ability to function. They're doing some large-scale studies now, dietary studies on Alzheimer's diets. This particular one is underway now at Rush University, and they're finding that blueberries combined with olive oil and nuts and things can really have some benefit for preventing Alzheimer's. So the mechanisms promoting brain health go way beyond the antioxidant benefit and anti-inflammatory benefit. We're now increasing neurogenesis and altering this neuronal communication that goes on in the brain. So it's really fascinating stuff. So the health benefits of blueberries, you really want to eat the whole fruit so that you can get this sort of interplay of different phytochemicals all working together to bring these events about. And how much do you need? Well, 1 cup daily, fresh or frozen, will do the job based on the clinical research. And here's some ideas for using blueberries in your diet, putting them in salads. These are all very healthy recipes: yogurt, smoothies, corn salad, hors d'oeuvres. And then, you know, the sweet dessert parts, you can still get benefit from including blueberries. They don't lose all of their medicinal potency when they're cooked. Now, cranberries are considered also to be very healthy, have a number of these different plant compounds in them. And if we look at the health functionality of fruits and vegetables in general, many of them have this antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, immune boosting effects, but cranberries have something very unique. They have these compounds called proanthocyanidins, or PACs, that actually keep pathogenic organisms at bay. And there's research on not only bacteria, but viruses and fungi, which I won't have time to talk about today. I'm going to focus on the bacterial and anti-adherence properties of cranberry. Now, how do these compounds actually work in the body? When you eat a cranberry product, you're consuming intact compounds, which can work directly on bacteria, but also these compounds are metabolized and produce compounds that are transformed by the gut microbiome into other types of molecules which can affect health. We also know now that these compounds can go down into our gut and bind to the gut bacterial species that are present and turn on signaling in the enteric nervous system that tells certain compounds to be turned on and remotely in other parts of our body. So these are called indirect effects. It's a little bit like if you had a peanut allergy and you had a little bit of peanut, it turns on this response throughout your body. It goes up your enteric nervous system. The adrenaline response is also similar. So these compounds can also alter the composition of the gut bacteria themselves to promote health. And there's a thing called leaky gut syndrome or dysbiosis, which occurs where if you take a lot of antibiotics or you have a very poor diet, drink too much alcohol and have a lot of stress, don't take good care of your teeth, you can get this issue. Cranberries have been shown to, and this work is continuing at a very brisk pace, I might add, but this is a couple of studies have shown that cranberry ingestion can really help maintain a good, healthy gut microflora, as well as kind of tone down some of these negative bacterial species that are causing some of this chronic inflammation and leaky gut syndrome, which can be caused by a poor diet and stress. So there's a lot to be done in this area, but I wanted to let you all know that this is an active area of research, and we want to keep our gut healthy because it has to do with so much involved with our overall health in general, if we can do that. So let's talk about these bacterial infection that how cranberries can help. They have a unique mechanism of action, and this is an E. coli bacteria. You can see all these little sticky hairs. They bind to cells in our bodies and can cause all kinds of infections. And cranberries go in and can interrupt that sticking step, if you will, and we call it bacterial anti-adhesion effect. It applies to urinary tract infections, stomach ulcer suppression, and oral cavity health. So cranberries, most people realize, have an effect on prevention, not treatment, but prevention of urinary tract or UTIs. And they're very, very common. Many women get them over and over and over again, 25% recurrence rate. They're the second leading cause of lost work days in women behind respiratory infections. It's a home remedy I've studied for 27 years, and we actually isolated these proanthocyanidin compounds that prevent the adhesion in the urinary tract of these pathogenic E. coli species. So that is my current area of research. So how do you get a UTI? Well, they enter from usually from outside your body and come up. They come from your rectum most of the time and enter and go up into your bladder, and they can continue on up into your kidneys and cause, you could be hospitalized and even die from these infections if they're not treated. So if you do happen to get an infection, it's very important that you have antibiotics. Cranberries are a preventative, but quickly, the age and gender, of course, they're more common in women. The length of the urethra is only 2 inches in women, so the bacteria can get in very, very easily. Sexual intercourse, of course, carries the bacteria right in there. If you need to go to the bathroom, you should drink more water and go more frequently to help flush out some of these bacteria. If you have an abnormality, a bend in your ureter, it can cause the bacteria to build up in there. Catheters, when you go to the hospital, you can easily get a UTI from catheters. And pregnancy, diabetes, immunity issues. But the two at the bottom, the food and utensil borne, it's very interesting because they've done studies now where these big buffet restaurants that have salad bars and things, if somebody has a UTI and they didn't wash their hands when they went to the bathroom, they can transfer the bacteria from their hand right onto the utensil. If you pick up that utensil and serve yourself some salad, and you then put your hand into your mouth for some reason, those bacteria can actually survive the digestion process and cause a UTI in you. So we really don't have a strong appreciation that UTIs can be foodborne. And household pets can also be a source of urinary pathogens. There's evidence that they're the same strains that infect dogs and humans. So if you do have UTIs and you have dogs, make sure and clean the yard up of dog waste carefully so that you're not exposed to those bacteria, which could cause UTIs in you. So when we talk about to this bacterial adhesion in the cells, which is the first step in the infection process. So cranberry prevents the adhesion of the bacteria to the bladder cells, and they cannot then cause an infection. So you're just interrupting a step in the process. And here we have an illustration of what's actually going on. These are bladder cells taken from people before consuming cranberry, and they're literally covered with the E. coli bacteria. So after consuming cranberry, the E. coli literally, there's hardly any on the bladder cells. The other way that cranberry can work is actually in our guts. When the cranberry proanthocyanins or PACs keep these pathogenic E. coli from burrowing into our gut lining. And this is what a lot of pathogens do, is that they burrow in and they hang out and they hide. And when situations are right, they come out and cause new infections. So if we can eat cranberry products and prevent these bacteria from being able to hide in our guts, it will reduce the reservoir of the E. coli that are available for future infections. So if you do suffer from recurrent UTIs, this could be a mechanism that works for you. So I've already mentioned that the proanthocyanins, or these PACs, are this active compound. And they have an unusual double bond that holds these epicatechins together. This bond is very strong and really can't be broken by reagents. So we get a lot of these interesting metabolites formed and different structures down in our guts that are formed from these A-type linkages. The B-type linkages are found single bond, easily broken. They're in grapes and chocolate, and unfortunately, you can't drink wine and eat chocolate and have it do anything for your UTIs. And we actually kind of proved that, and we gave people different products that have PACs in them and collected their urine and found that cranberry was the only one in which any kind of activity in the urine for anti-adhesion was detected. So is cranberry clinically effective for UTI prevention? We of course, the rubber hits the road when it's given clinically, and different studies have found that all product forms of cranberry, the juice, the dried cranberries, the dietary supplements, etc., are active at single doses, but you want to make sure and get the higher quality products. Some major clinical trials have been done. This is definitely not a comprehensive list. I just wanted to give you an idea of different cranberry juices. Powders have been tested in a lot of different demographics. We got elderly, pregnant women, university women, young girls, even children have been tested with cranberry, and significant reductions in UTI occurrence resulted. Currently, UTIs are managed. If you get a UTI, you have to use antibiotics. But many urologists are prescribing low doses of antibiotics for preventing these infections, which is not a good idea because it's causing massive antibiotic resistance issues. And this resistance is increasing at a rapid rate. And if you look at India, for example, you've got 80% resistance to some of these antibiotics that are routinely used. It's very scary. We're going to start seeing people dying from UTIs, which is happening in India now. So if you can't find an antibiotic that'll kill your infection, that's it for you. And the problem is that this antibiotic resistance isn't just confined to one antibiotic. It usually hits the entire class of antibiotics. So you could get a cut on your hand and end up dying from it if you have an antibiotic resistant infection. So this anti-adhesion mechanism that interferes with this infection process isn't killing the bacteria, and that's the great news. It doesn't act like an antibiotic. It just interferes with this initial step in the infection process. So you do not develop resistance to cranberry. We did a study where we showed that with cranberry juice. And so preventing these infections really could, if we can get people on cranberry instead of having people with UTIs wait until they get one and then go have to take an antibiotic, if we can get people on cranberry to prevent the infections, we'll have fewer infections and less need to take the antibiotics. and potentially slow the pace of this resistance development down. There have been a number of studies that have shown, higher resistance rates with antibiotic use for UTI treatment, and also low doses for prevention of infections. This particular trial here was for preventing infections with low doses, and they got massive resistance, whereas the cranberry was literally almost as effective as the low-dose antibiotic for preventing infections, but it was preferred to take the cranberry because they didn't have any of these antibiotic resistant or any resistant issues with the cranberry juice at all. There have been a number of pediatric trials with cranberry, and this is important. You don't want to give kids antibiotics. It's just not a good thing to do. They end up getting many more gastrointestinal problems later in life, and their immunity can be affected because you're wiping out the good bacterial species in their gut that help them to prevent diseases and other afflictions as they age. So keeping kids on cranberry is a really good idea and can have a very good effect. The American Urological Association has basically said that they have reviewed all of the studies, and some are negative, some are positive, but the negative ones really didn't use standardized products that had the active component in it. It was degraded. There were all kinds of issues. But reviewing the totality of studies, they do recommend cranberry as a preventative for UTI. So how much do you need for the UTI benefits? Well, 8 to 10 ounces a day of the cranberry juice, the cocktails. I also like to recommend the 100% cranberry juice that you can get at some, now you can get them in big box stores. It's very, very tart and astringent. There's no sugar added. You can use 1/4 cup of that. Will do the same as the cranberry juice cocktail type products. Dried cranberries, cranberry sauces, they all work. There's an FDA qualified health claim that just came out. Now you really need to be careful about this because I don't think that they did a great job with this health claim. They based it on serving sizes rather than on the amount of the pack or proanthocyanidin that are in these products. Especially with the cranberry pills, you want to get a water-soluble extract that contains juice. So a juice extract works well for UTI prevention. Some of the cheap things that you can find do not work. So you really kind of get what you pay for with the cranberry powder. So don't be afraid to spend a little more if you want to use these for UTI prevention. So quickly, I'll just touch on a few of the other areas of the body which bacterial adhesion can help. So stomach ulcers are caused by a bacteria. Many people don't realize that. And Helicobacter pylori is the cause. It's not hurry, worry, and curry anymore. These are highly mobile gram-negative bacteria that cause this whole host of symptoms of bloating and gnawing pain and burning. If you know somebody who has an ulcer, it's just terrible. But these bacteria get down into your stomach lining and they attach to the stomach lining and cause the infections. They have a very high survivability in the stomach. No other bacteria can really survive in the high acid environment in the stomach. The organisms actually produce a high pH ammonia, and it's around them. So they're in this little microenvironment where they regulate the pH, and it actually prevents them from being killed by the acid. So the transmission, they're highly contagious, and they are transmitted mainly in contaminated water and food. They can also be the oral route, so you can get it from kissing somebody that has H. pylori. These are usually passed from the mother to the baby in the first 10 days of life. The worldwide infection rate is extremely high in some parts of the world where sanitation isn't as good. It's a little bit lower here in the US, but in places like West Africa, China, and South America, it's a terrible problem. And if it's not treated, it can lead to stomach cancer. So curing ulcers with antibiotics, now they recommend that you have to take 3 or 4 of these different antibiotic treatments over a lengthy period to kill these bacteria, and people just can't do it. They don't have access to these antibiotics. It's horrible. So that a lot of them end up getting stomach cancer. Stomach cancer is quite deadly. There have been a number of studies looking at cranberry, especially the juice, to suppress these infections, not kill the bacteria, but suppress them. So you still have the bacteria, but they're not able to cause ulcers and lead to stomach cancer. The first one was done in China over a 3-month period with 500 mils, so it's 2 8-ounce glasses of a cranberry juice cocktail drink, suppressed 15% of these infections. Another one was done in Chile, South America, where there's high levels of H. pylori infection. This was done in children, and they tried to combine it with a probiotic drink. They really didn't see much of a difference when the probiotic drink was added to the cranberry, but the cranberry itself, 200 milliliters a day, suppressed the 17% of these infections. Then there was one very recently done in China, where they gave cranberries to an indigenous population that was south of Beijing, that has a 55% infection rate in the population. And they found that with a pressed cranberry juice that contained a little bit higher, of 44 milligrams of proanthocyanidins, given twice per day, once in the morning and once at night, significantly increased the suppression rate, much more so than in previous studies. So to get these benefits for H. pylori management, the half cup serving of the 100% pure cranberry juice contains about 44 milligrams of the proanthocyanin, or the pack, which when you do this twice a day will help to suppress the H. pylori infections. You can dilute this juice in other juices, seltzer water, mix it into yogurts, whatever you want to do. Another option is 8 ounces of a higher percentage cranberry juice drink. Most of the ones that you can buy in the markets are about 25 to 27%, and they need to be, that's not enough. You need to take quite a bit of that. But if you can find one that's a fresh pressed juice, you can take that in the morning and the evening. The jury's still out on supplements. They have some dissolution issues. They don't dissolve as well in the stomach. So more research needs to be done on those. Just to mention quickly that cranberries also have some research that's been done on the oral cavity. And this is the isolated packs. This is not cranberry juice. You don't want to be swishing your mouth with cranberry juice because of the high acid and some sugar content. But they reduce the severity of the cavities and inhibited adhesion and actually reduced plaque. So pretty interesting stuff. And there's a lot of research done on cranberry packs and periodontal disease, actually inhibiting the adhesion of these to the cells up in your jaw, reducing inflammation. And also the most interesting part, when you have advanced periodontal disease, you have a loss of bone up in your jaw. And they've seen here on the right, when they've injected packs directly up into the jaws, it's actually regrown bone. So you're getting a curative effect from these cranberry packs. But the thing to remember is that you want to take a product, and they're beginning to develop these that have the active ingredient, the active pack ingredient, in a gum form, in a mouthwash form, to fight these bacteria. So just to finish up here, there's a dilemma with cranberry in that it is very powerful. The cranberry juice, the cocktails that are in the market, they do have sugar in them, but just to give you an idea of the amount that they have to add to bring it up to palatability for people, because cranberry contains hardly any natural sugar. So if you like the cranberry juice cocktails, they don't really have too much more than orange juice. They actually have less than grape juice. So, you know, that's what you're looking at. But with the 100% cranberry juice, you have no sugar. And I think that's an excellent option. And the amount of sugar that's in the dried cranberries, or as we call them, sweetened dried cranberries, is equal to that found in other dried fruits, such as raisins and dried cherries. Also a good source of fiber, so they can be a good choice as well. So just to give you an idea of how to use cranberries in your diet, of course, cranberry juice, you can make it into cocktails. And interestingly, the alcohol actually improves the absorption of some of these compounds. Cranberries are unique that these proanthocyanidins don't break down in the cooking process. So you can still maintain activity. Use them in place of raisins, to make cookies, that kind of thing. So oatmeal cookies with the dried cranberries are just delicious. So the incentives to utilize cranberry for health promotion really are, from my perspective, you know, reducing the antibiotic resistance issues. If we can use cranberry in our diet on a daily basis, we won't get a lot of these infections. They're convenient, they're a functional food. They are also effective at reasonable serving sizes. So you have all these additional health benefits as well. There's a review article if you're interested in more information on this, cranberries and bioactive constituents in human health. This is an open access article that you can download for free. And it talks about all these different health benefits and some of the ones I didn't even mention today. So with questions now, if you call into this number and enter this meeting ID, then you can ask me questions. So with that,
Okay, Amy, wow, that was fantastic. I know for sure the next time I go to the grocery store, I'm going to be loading back up with some more blueberries and definitely some really good cranberry juice. I really appreciate your tips and advice today, and the health implications are very far-reaching, as you said. And you know, I really thank you for bringing this knowledge to us all watching this program today.
great. Well, thank you very much for having me. And if people do have questions and they need to reach me, I am at the Rutgers Marucci Blueberry Cranberry Research Center in Chatsworth, and you can Google me and email me and any of the questions that you do have.
If you don't mind, could you put the screen back up for a second, just because there's a little bit of a delay and it'll take people a few minutes to respond if they do have.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, you know, talk about making a difference in your diet. There's really some very, very positive benefits that would help a lot of people by you know, just adding those fresh blueberries and cranberries.
Right,
You know, either
right.
the raw, like you said, or cranberries that are cooked in cranberry juice, particularly the non-sweetened version. I think that's you know, pretty encouraging.
It is. There are many options available for people. You don't have to, if you don't want the sugar, there are non-nutritively sweetened cranberry juice cocktail drinks available if you're diabetic, and of course the 100% juice. So the supplements do not have any sugar in them. That's another thing, but you really want to avoid those really cheap ones because they just don't work for UTI. They grind up the cranberry skins, dry them, and put them in capsules. And normally that's the part that's thrown away after you make the juice. So you really have to watch the supplements. But there are some excellent ones that do work, but they tend to cost about $1.30 a piece. But you need one a day. And if you have recurrent UTIs, that's not a lot to fork over to prevent these infections.
Right. Okay, let's see. I'm looking, we may have a caller. So it's the recap, just thought like if you had a cup of blueberries each day and drank, say, anywhere from 10 to 12 ounces of cranberry juice every day, you could probably do yourself a world of good.
Right, right, absolutely. I mean, and these days when we're under threat of COVID-19, really it's been shown that if you can keep your immune system in good shape and your oxidant status pretty low, eat a lot of high antioxidant foods, keep vitamin D levels high, and eat well, your body will do a lot better against some of these viral infections. We don't have any direct research on cranberries and blueberries for COVID-19, but as far as just preparing your body to, in the horrible event that you were to get it, it certainly can't hurt.
Yeah, that is very, very sound advice. And I was thinking that specifically listening to the presentation, particularly when you were talking about how some of the things in the cranberries are able to bind and kind of limit other things from binding and that barrier. I thought, man, that sounds similar to some of the different solutions they've been coming up with to stop the virus and some of the the medicines they've been talking about. So that's pretty interesting how that kind of all works.
Well, and absolutely, and we're in the Cranberry Institute. It funds some studies on cranberries, and we had a Zoom call the other day, and this came up as a potential area of study and looking at cranberry and the potential to prevent adhesion of the COVID-19 virus or to interact with the coat proteins on the outside of the viral molecule. So there is some potential work that could be done in this area.
All right, Amy, I'm just going to give it one more minute just to round it off at 11:15. But like I said earlier, man, I really enjoyed the presentation. I really like the balance you strike with the science and the everyday, so anybody can understand it. And I think that's a really good, way to put things across, is to describe the science in a manner that the everyday layperson can understand. And I think you did a great job with that this morning.
Well, yeah, I mean, communication is everything in science, and there are a lot of really interesting discoveries that are made, but a lot of times scientists just talk to other scientists and use lots of acronyms and big words that people can't understand. But if you can break it down, you want people to be able to benefit from the research that you do and the discoveries that are made. So it's critical to be able to communicate it in a way that makes people go, oh, I understand that. And we know that when people understand how things work, they're more likely to do them. And so understanding how cranberry prevents bacterial adhesion, people are more likely to say, that's actually doing me some good, and I know why. And they'll tell others.
Yeah, very, very well said. I said that's a great way to wrap things up. And thank you very much. And on that note, I am going to stop the live stream. And Amy, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the presentation, and that's great information that can help us all.
Great. Okay. Glad to be able to present to you today.
Are you still there, Amy?
I am. I didn't know if you needed me to hang on.
No, we're good. I just was having some issues on my end with my service.
Okay. I think we had a little bit of a cat meowing there for a while.
All right. Thank you very much.